All right. Happy Wednesday again. Hi, I'm Bob Krell. I'm your host and the founder and publisher of Healthy Indoors Magazine. And welcome to the Healthy Indoors Live Show. We've got another great show. We always have great shows. So I guess I always have to preface it by saying, among the great shows we do, this will be another one of them. But anyway, today we'll be joined by the executive director of CIRI, the Cleaning Industry Research Institute, Mr. John Downey. He's been on the show before. I'm really looking forward to discussing what's going on with Syria and what's been happening there. So many of you are watching the show, I believe, on the Healthy Indoors online global community, which is a platform that you can become part of. Join it at global.healthyindoors.com. And it will allow you to not just watch shows and wonderful programs like the Healthy Indoors Live Show and a lot of other programs that we do, but it'll actually give you the opportunity to network and engage with other professionals in the industry. One of the other real exciting things we have coming up is for members of the community, if you become a community member, is the Ask Me Anything series. And this is actually a feature that we've started a month ago for the Healthy Indoors Online Global Community members. Once a month, we bring an industry professional in, and we actually set up a Zoom call for members. We can come in and you can directly ask questions. It's a moderated forum. This month, it'll be next Wednesday on the 28th of May from 1 to 2 p.m. And our featured expert this month is Jeffrey May. Jeff May is a longtime industry veteran with indoor air quality and indoor environmental issues. But Jeff is also one of our longest running columnists in Healthy Indoors Magazine. So we're super excited to have Jeff on board, for this second event. So again, you have to join. You have to join the community to do that and become an actual member. But we certainly recommend that you go along and do that. So we'll be back with John Downey on talking about Syria in a minute after this word. Welcome, John Downey, the executive director of Siri. How are you?
I'm great, Bob. How are you?
I'm great. I'm always happy when I'm on camera. I guess we were talking in pre-show about how many shows we're doing, which is like really crazy. The amount of programs we're doing. We just as of yesterday dropped a new series. Well, we dropped it 2 weeks ago, but it was the second episode of a new series for the American Industrial Hygiene Association (AIHA).
Right.
The show is Healthier Workplaces. We're super excited. That's a show that we'll be doing. It looks like now at least through the next year with them every 2 weeks of first and third Wednesdays of each month. So pretty exciting. Anyway, but
Very
yeah,
cool.
it's a lot of camera work. I'm spending a
Well,
lot of time a lot of time in the studio.
I want to say that since the last time I was on the show, I think you've redone your intro, graphics and everything. Just absolute 10 out of 10.
Oh, thank
Perfectly
you.
done. What
Thank you. Well, we're trying to
great
get
stuff.
production value. We're trying to get
I'll tell you
production
what,
value.
you
Well,
do.
yeah, well, I mean, you know what? Honestly, what's funny is like we still for our own brand stuff or the healthy indoor stuff, our intros aren't the greatest for those. Like the other shows we produce, we do a better job, which is amazing. Our own brand, we tend to. It's like, oh, we don't have time to do more production work.
Yeah, I'm in the cleaning business, and my carpet is always dirty, so I know
It's
the
like,
feeling.
yeah, I haven't cleaned the ductwork in my house in like 20 years. I mean, like, it's like, yeah. Anyway, so hey, so the last time we had you on the show was prior to the Healthy Buildings 2022 event, which your organization was the host of,
Yes, yes. Technically, well, it was
or
the Healthy Buildings 2022 event. It was supposed to be 2021, which is really the kind of illustrates the struggles that we had with COVID as it related to that. It what the event was in late January of 2022. It was, in our conversation before the show started, we talked a little bit about it, how big of a struggle the circumstances were. Of course, we wanted to go live in Hawaii, and you were very much involved in that. And then at the
Mhm.
last minute, we had to switch to a virtual event, which went off, I think, about as well as it possibly could have
Mhm.
gone under the circumstances. I mean, it was brutal for those. I want to give special shout out to Sarah, who works for me, who did an incredible job. But Carrie Kenny, Richard Shaughnessy, Shannon Hughes was another, the staff people. And then we brought in people just for the virtual to train the speakers. Who,
Right.
there were hundreds of speakers of different, including individuals as well as panels. And you know what? We all survived it, and I think it went well. In fact, I've gotten a lot of very positive feedback from it.
Well, I think people that haven't been involved in the back end of one of these type of events, an all virtual event, don't have a true appreciation for how freaking difficult these things are. And especially your event was more challenging than most because you had approaching 300 presenters from around the planet. We've run a bunch of conferences with 60, 70 presenters, mostly US centric. We've done a lot, with some international, but I mean, not to the extent that you had. And your cadence, as far as how quick you were putting presenters through with that scientific type community presentation, with 10-minute intervals, that's maddening.
Believe me, I know.
It's like, well, I mean, I was there too as a presenter, and and having worked in these things, I have an appreciation for how technically difficult that is to queue people up, that many people, and keep it running and
And
stay
keep people,
relatively on time. You stayed on time for the most part. You
for
guys
the
really
most
didn't.
part, what, sometimes there was not enough time for Q&A as we would have liked. But you just do the best that you can, and it is important. In fact, it's crucial in a conference like that you stay on time, because people are planning, for different, to attend different things. And when you start running far behind, really, even it's really no different than a in-person conference. When a conference is running an hour or two behind, people become impatient. Now, some people are fine with it, but a lot of people become impatient. So, I was really pleased. I was really displeased that we had to do what we had to do, but I was really pleased with the way we were able to execute when push came to shove. We were able to execute effectively. So,
Well, that was a last minute pivot you had to do too. I mean, that was the thing. You were up until what, not long before Christmas, you were still, you know, thinking about
three
being in person.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
It was almost, it was after Christmas that we made the final decision. And it was, I mean, it was just, you just, there were no normal work weeks then. I mean, it was just, you worked as long as you needed to work, and got things done. The thing that was good about that conference was, and you know it's kind of a, it's, I'm going to go with the good part first, and then talk a little bit about the, what I will describe as the disappointing, or maybe something that didn't go as I had hoped about the event. But the amount of participation on the part of speakers, presenters, whether including the normal oral abstracts, as well as the posters, which we did some really unique things with posters, uh, and made them come alive for that type of, because they were more than what typical poster would be in a live conference, because of, just, it gave us some ability to do that.
Mhm.
But we also did, doing the same sort of thing that you would do in a live conference would have, I hate to say it, but it would have been kind of a waste of time. But the participation both from within the industry as well as within the academic community. And I know on several different workshops, there was a lot of uh, interaction between practitioners and researchers in different areas. And I was, that was one of the things I hoped would be there, it would happen from the conference. And I really felt good about the fact that it did. By and large, I thought there was really good cooperation in that way.
And again, it's always a challenge, when you have to go full online, full virtual, it's challenging. I mean, our original plans, we were involved with that to do a hybrid event. So you're going to be in person from Hawaii, live in person. We were going to live stream a portion of it. And then you ended up having to pare it down a little. You're originally going to have 4 tracks, I think, and you went to 3 tracks, but you live streamed 3 tracks, which is honestly very challenging.
Yeah,
No, seriously, anytime you go
I
more than a
know.
single track, I mean, we've done single track and double track. And I remember, we had the opportunity to give you an RFP on it. It was like, no, I don't want to do a 3 track. It's like I didn't even want to walk us
You
into
did.
that one.
I was going to say you didn't want to do that.
I no,
And
I
when
just
I look
because
and looking
I
at the
know
numbers,
having done 2, I know how hard 2 is, and I'm like, oh, I don't want
right,
to add one more tier of, I wasn't comfortable being able to pull it off, and I'm pretty comfortable usually, I mean,
right,
so that's
right.
so kudos to you and your team to do that because in that
Well, thank you,
limited amount of time, what you pulled off was pretty remarkable, I would say. You
Sarah Larson.
know,
She gets all the credit.
well, somebody, and the thing is, again, the behind the scenes, not to belabor this, but I know what the back end is like on these kind of events and the phone calls and the emails and the texts and everybody, I mean, it's terror in the back end usually.
It and people, I will say this, people were great. I'm talking about the presenters. They, in terms of, they understood, they cooperated. It was really good. We couldn't have been happier with how cooperative they were. But I think a part of that was, to give us a little credit, they really appreciated the fact that of how strongly we were working on transitioning this successfully, and we were friendly and accommodating when they needed. Again, I'll say Sarah's name once again, but really
Mhm.
everybody, Carrie, Andy Curry was also helping out. She helped me with vendors, which, I mean, we had a tremendous response for the Healthy Buildings Conference from vendors, but they were expecting an in-person conference. They wanted
Right.
face-to-face talk. So, the transition to a virtual conference with vendors, what we had to figure out in very short notice, ways to bring them into the conference in a way that would be valuable, because they pay good money.
Sure.
So
And that's really that may be the hardest thing to do, John. Trade virtual trade shows to this day have never really worked that well. And we dabble with that so many times in different events over the years, and it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to get. You can't get that trade show experience, because that's that person to person walking the booths. You
exactly.
really can't emulate that online.
Yes, that's exactly true. But I mean, we did the best that we could,
Hmm.
and I again, what they appreciated was how much effort we put into making it a good experience for them, even though it wasn't going to be live in person in Hawaii. So that I was really pleased with most of the areas at of the conference, even though it was virtual. And believe me, we did not want to go virtual if we didn't have to, absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Among other things, I live in Ohio. January in Ohio or January in Hawaii, and my wife was coming, and some other family members were coming. So uh, that part of it too was a little disappointing. But you got to do
Yeah.
what you got to do.
I was a little disappointed, to be
I
honest.
know
I,
you
I was
were.
I was kind of looking, I mean, I wasn't really excited about the prospects of lugging, probably 800 pounds of equipment on an airplane over there, but it was going to be we were going to stay for an extra couple weeks, so that was our plan too, my wife and I.
Right.
So,
Right.
It's so yeah. So that vacation never happened. But overall, I think the event was successful. So here's the pointed question: You ever going to do this again?
Well, honestly, the answer is probably not. But kind of relatedly, er, the Indoor Air Conference is going to be in Hawaii. Gosh, I hope I'm not jumping the gun on this, but and initially Siri was going to participate in that directly, but as we found the well, some things changed with Siri, which we'll talk about in terms of our focus and scope. And also, the Indoor Air Conference is not the same as a Healthy Buildings Conference in the sense that it is pretty much all research and all researchers, or primarily, as opposed to bringing researchers and practitioners together. So, you know, the more we looked at it, the reason we wanted to do it, and frankly, I participated uh, in developing things from February up and really into July of this year, helping Richard Shaughnessy out on putting together a proposal for ISIAC. And the the good thing about it is we already had done all the legwork to figure out how how to do a conference, where to do a conference, what are the things you got to be aware of, all those back end things that you were talking about, Bob.
Hmm.
In Hawaii, we had already gone to the trouble to do that. It was extreme. The Healthy Buildings Conference was extremely well received. And so, even though we ultimately, in terms of registrations and people submitting abstracts, way beyond what was originally projected. So we
Hmm.
figure people want to go to Hawaii, and Asia wants to go to Hawaii. We
Sure.
had incredible number of people, especially from Japan, who had signed up to go to the conference. So, so long story short, directly, no. I will probably participate in the Indoor Air Conference in 2024 in some way, but it won't be an official Siri. Siri won't be involved as the host.
So let's talk about Siri now. So there's been some changes. Well, first for those in the audience, the viewing audience that are not familiar with Siri, it's the Cleaning Industry Research Institute, right? Got that right.
Yep, you got it.
Tell us about who you are, what your purpose is, and what's going on.
So Siri's been around for 17 years. Its history, its beginnings are in the commercial cleaning sector, and that even to this day, that's really where it is best known. Um, eh, Siri actually began its work by establishing some methodology for uh, testing or basically cleaning testing to figure out how to measure cleaning effectiveness. And they developed, basically from that work, they determined that the best way to measure cleaning effectiveness at that time, this was going back to somewhere around 2007, 2008, but I think it pretty much carries through to today, is using ATP as your measure. And from that work, in conjunction with the ISSA, the International Sanitary Supply Association, Siri and ISSA developed a standard for cleaning K to 12 schools. They then later ISSA developed a kind of a companion standard for cleaning buildings, and that was where Siri started. And I'll kind of skip ahead. Siri over that time it went through several research projects. some that turned out better than others. It's the cleaning industry is not an industry that has done a lot of research, especially not published research. So the idea of SERI is to kind of establish the science behind cleaning processes. And so that's what they did. In an industry that doesn't necessarily focus on that, but focuses on how quickly can it be done, how
Mhm.
cheap can I do it,
Right.
and still make money. Those are kind of the areas of concern. It has always been a bit of a struggle, to be honest. So I got involved in 2017, and with SERI. So it had been several years into SERI's existence before I got involved, and I came from a different industry. I came from the professional cleaning and disaster restoration industry, carpet cleaning, excuse me, and disaster restoration. And so that is an affiliated industry to that with commercial cleaning, but it's also very different. And that also, especially in disaster restoration, brings in remediation, brings in a greater, in a more significant way, indoor air quality, all of those factors, surfaces, health, uh, you know, all those things. And so with my involvement, I actually came from, I had previously published a journal for the IICRC, the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning and Restoration certification, which I would imagine many, if not most, of your viewers will be somewhat familiar with.
Sure.
And IICRC published a peer review journal for about, I think it was 3+ years, but ultimately they decided to discontinue it. And when they decided to discontinue it, I approached SERI, talked to them about the possibility of doing a peer review journal for them. What did they think? How would that work? And from there, kind of one thing led to another. We did a few symposia.
Mhm.
We have published about 10 issues of our peer review journal over that time. So that's kind of where SERI came from. Um, the struggle for SERI, and it's a struggle that a lot of associations have, although most associations are trade associations, and SERI is not a trade association. It is a different type of organization, and I'll come back to that in a second. But what we have in common with a lot of trade associations is it's hard to develop a sustainable uh, financial model, revenue model. And in the 5 years I've been involved with SERI as executive director, we would go up and down. I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. When COVID first hit, uh, we we did great for a while, but and we, because there was an intense interest in the sorts of things that SERI did. But as that waned, revenues kind of they spike and then they go down. I never have taken a salary with SERI. I have been paid as revenues allowed. Uh, but I've reached the point where, quite frankly, um, I'm pretty much at retirement age. I'm 65, and I
Hush your
have.
mouth.
Well, is what it
It is
is.
what it is. I'm not going out easily.
Well, and I'm not either. But you know, but the days when I can, and I also own I mentioned earlier, I own a carpet cleaning business, so I'm involved in that business that pays the bills. And SERI does not, but I probably over the past 5 years, on average, put in 30 to 40 hours a week on SERI business. often without being paid. I'll put it this way. If I had been paid minimum wage for my work with Siri, would have had a big pay boost for compared to what I got. So but I just reached a point in my life where I'm willing and able and committed to continuing to do what I can to help establish and communicate the science behind cleaning, restoration, remediation. Uh, but I can't do it for that kind of time. So the scope of Siri's work, especially its public, I'll call it its public face, it is going to go down a lot, because that was a lot PR work, doing things like being on podcasts with you, which I do because of you. But the idea of spending that much time over for me, I, I don't choose to do it anymore. I've been working 80 to 100 hours a week for too many years, 7 days a week, too many years. So I need to cut back. And I talked to the Siri executive committee a few times, and ultimately what we have decided, the first thing we decided is that Siri is not going to go away, that Siri has done too many valuable things, and still has a unique place in the industry, and we need to figure out a way to make it to maximize what Siri provides to the market being the cleaning and restoration industries. And in doing that, we're going to kind of narrow. We're going to continue to publish our journal, which is a peer-reviewed journal. We're going to actually open up our website to non-members of Siri as well. Members already get it, and we're going to really focus on technical peer-reviewed research articles that all of those issues of the journal will be available to anyone. The I think that's currently that may be the only one that's available. The name is also changed, but I won't get into that right now.
Okay.
So we're going to focus on that. We're going to stay away. We're not going to try and build our brand. We're going to try and find ways to provide greater value to the industry. Now, if I could, I'll kind of do talk about two things together, because they do go together. One is, I mentioned earlier that Siri is not a trade association. What it is, it's a technical nonprofit organization. Under the IRS code, it's a 501c3. And as that type of organization, trade associations are responsible to their members. Mm-hmm. Organizations like Siri are specifically not responsible to their members. They're responsible to the industry that they represent, and even more so, they are responsible to the public interest. Mm-hmm. That's the type of organization they are. So what does that mean in practice? It means if I'm not going to name names, but if a trade association wanted to do research, or wanted to report on research that was done, or coordinate research efforts, if a trade association did that and it had an adverse impact on one or more of its members, even though it was good, useful information, those members would have a legal recourse to prevent that information from going out, or even to take legal action against the association. That's not the case with an organization like Siri. We're required, to the extent that within our mission to provide good, useful information that is not promotional of any particular vested interest. And so, being that kind of an organization, that's where we believe CIRI has a provides a unique benefit to the industry, or industries actually, that it serves. That leads to the other thing that, and I'm kind of, to some extent, I'm getting ahead of my executive committee, but we've had some discussions about this. It isn't something that has actually been um, rubber stamped, or not rubber stamped. It hasn't actually been approved fully yet. It has been it has been in a
It's tentative.
it's tentative. Yes,
Is that too
tentatively
strong a
approved.
word, or is that under consideration?
No, I think it. I
Okay.
think tentative is the right
Okay.
word. Where CIRI needs to just focus on, in a very narrow way, on figuring out effective ways to measure the things that the industries we serve do, measure cleaning performance as it relates to surfaces, as it relates to, and different types of surfaces. How do you measure? You can't use ATP effectively on carpet. So how do you measure cleaning effectiveness on carpet? And how do you do it in a way that it's fair to all the different systems out there that are used to clean? How can you, measure that without providing a bias? And that's where, again, CIRI goes in, because we don't have a bias. We must not have a bias other than the most effective ways of measurement in this case. So I'm kind of thinking, ASTM has a lot of technical standards where they focus on basically, how do you test to do this? How do you test to do that? EPA has government standards that tell people, where their scientists have told people how to test for this and that. My thought is that, and the executive committee has, as I said, tentatively agreed that this is what we would like to focus on, that this would be a good, useful purpose for CIRI moving forward. It is, not high profile. We're not going to go out and we're not going to test 5 different cleaning methods and declare such and such is the winner. We're going to we're going to let people know that we have developed tests for different types of cleaning. And it can be cleaning, it's going to be disinfection. It can be related to remediation, restoration, just general cleaning in hospitals, things like that, and different surfaces. Even if you think about it, even within hard surfaces, there are so many different ones. Tabletops, what kind of tabletop?
Sure.
So that's kind of what we are leaning towards doing moving forward. It will enable me to continue my work with CIRI. I'm going to focus primarily on the journal, and the journal will be conveying that research, that work that CIRI does on establishing testing protocols. So that's kind of
Okay.
what where we are right now. And I will know more.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not so much of a paradigm shift as it is just a little bit of a redirection and more of a focus change, maybe, right? Just
It's
y-
a it's a
yeah,
narrowing of
you're
the
narrowing
focus.
it down. You're still doing the same stuff you always did and what your original purpose was with the organization. You're just changing your focus, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We by being narrower in focus, and kind of not ramping up, but ratcheting down some of the other activities, we
Hmm.
reduce our expenses so that we can live within our means, and
Mhm.
And that's what we have to do. And you know what? I can give 5 or 10 hours a week to Siri. I can do, and am happy to, but
Mhm.
I can't continue to do 30 or 40 hours a week. And we have a variety of volunteers. In fact, I'll mention to you, we uh, just sent out a survey to members and supporters of Siri, asking for their willingness in areas that they would be that they would be willing to volunteer and assist Siri. And we've had a great response to that. I've been very pleased. And so we're going to have to become even more a volunteer organization in order to do things that the end well, we need to do what the industry wants us to do. We can't,
Right, right.
it's not our job to decide that, other than we know we want to do this figuring out of how to test,
Mhm.
but beyond that, the volunteers will kind of drive the different areas that they want to participate in.
Well, I mean, so let's talk a little bit more just about cleaning standards and some of the challenges with that. So your current standards based largely on ATP, adenosine triphosphate swabs,
Correct.
which is looking for organic material, but doesn't pick up inorganics.
Correct.
So chemicals and different particulate that's not organic in nature, you're not going to pick up with ATP. So is that something that's on the horizon? To look at, because obviously I know there's a big focus on remediation, dealing with mold and bacteria. And obviously now in the advent of this pandemic, the whole viral issue, cleaning up viral constituents, a lot of concern in that. Not really convinced that you can look for viral with ATP. I guess it's not alive, doesn't have adenosine triphosphate,
Right.
um, yeah, but typically, that all gets lumped together as microbiological for some reason. Uh, but so, what other? I mean, you are series looking into maybe exploring some other testing methodologies to look at different types of constituents.
You always want to be looking for what can you find. I
Mhm.
will tell you what Siri determined when they went with ATP. And we've actually, at this time, we've uh, kind of stayed the course, if you will, with ATP. Although ATP does not measure, as you said, non living things that do not contain ATP. They, what it provides is a marker for effectiveness, because you're going to find ATP pretty much anywhere that you find. I'll just say in the very general term, bugs or dirt. You're going to find
Or
ATP there.
people, skin cells. I mean,
People
we're shedding particles that are organic.
all the time, uh, and so what? No, it does not. We're not measuring. It was kind of a big deal when it was kind of an objection rather than a big deal, that Siri heard when COVID started, that we recommended using ATP to test for cleaning efficacy related to COVID. Our feeling was that, and this was before we got into airborne as opposed to surfaces.
Sure, sure.
And of course, anything that's in the air is going to go to surfaces. Anything on surfaces, especially incredibly small, is going to go into the air.
Yeah, and
But
there's still discussion whether fomite transmission is real or not, and with that virus.
right, right. With that, but what we're trying to do is figure out. All right, so in a reasonable way, how can you test? How can you measure? And that Siri took the position that a process that utilized ATP to before and after cleaning would give you a realistic uh, idea of how effective the cleaning had been. Is it telling you that you had this much COVID, this much COVID on surfaces before and this much after? No, it doesn't. But it does tell you that you have this much contamination before, and then afterwards you have 80% less
Mhm.
contamination, and therefore you are doing what you need to. On the other, you're going in the right direction, and that's ultimately, you know what,
Sure.
with cleaning, it's always that way. You mentioned skin cells, which are, pouring out of us all the time.
Sure.
uh, a variety of others. So anything you clean is immediately dirtied in a realistic sense.
Mhm.
But so it's never a perfect. You're not trying to create a perfectly clean environment. You're trying to maintain an environment in a healthy or healthful state.
Well, I think it's all in the messaging too. And again, I would concur that using ATP as a marker for hygiene, for cleanliness, it's a reasonable marker. The problem is some of the messaging. I'm not necessarily putting it on your organization, but just in general that was out in the space where people are saying we're going to test for SARS-CoV-2 on surfaces with ATP, and it's like, no, you're not. It's like directly. That's not a direct way to test for that. And so I'm a stickler for making sure that the messaging's tight, but I totally concur with your use of it. At that point you're looking for high, trying to get surfaces clean. That's a good, quick, relatively inexpensive way to trace for that.
Right.
So
And that's the other thing related to that. And Bob, I hope we have to find different ways of measuring cleaning efficacy, cleaning effectiveness, because of the characteristics of different surfaces. ATP works on a particular type of surface
sure.
in particular. It doesn't work on everything equally. So we need to find other ways of doing it. But in the interim, one of the really important things with uh, with cleaning measurement is it has to be something that can be done easily, quickly, and inexpensively. Because it isn't, otherwise it isn't going to get done, except in very highly specialized circumstances. That was when Siri did the original research where they ended up recommending ATP. That was not what they started with. They had several other um, um, technologies that they thought would be better, but it turned out that for the purposes of what they were trying to learn, the best method was ATP.
It makes total sense. And honestly, I've been using ATP since I think 2000 or 2001. It's great technology, and it I think this is the key point that you're hitting on. It's technology that doesn't have to be used by a consultant necessarily, not by a highly skilled investigative person. It's something that anybody can, once they're taught how to, properly use the swab and swab a surface. I mean, they're sticking it in a meter. It's a direct read, right? Light units.
Sure.
It's
Right.
really not hard. I mean, it's of all the tests that you can do, it's probably the most easy test in the field that somebody can do without screwing up. So, and it's fairly inexpensive. Couple
Right.
bucks, you get right, couple bucks per sample, and you have results
Right.
back in 60
All
seconds.
right.
That's a big deal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be. I mean, there is some training. You need to be.
Oh, sure.
You need to be in term. Your samples need to be consistent. If they're inconsistent, your results are going to be inconsistent. But you don't
Right, yeah,
need to be a
surface
scientist.
area. Yeah, if you get the surface
Right.
area
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you are sampling, one guy is sampling a 2 by 2 inch area and the other is a foot by a foot, they're
Yeah.
going to get very different results.
Right, right.
So those are just common sense things. But
Sure.
the other things are much more complex. That may,
Absolutely.
this is so. You know, again, we will look at. I would love to see, and I've heard there's some other technologies out there, especially related to air, that because ATP isn't an effective technology, and that's what um, your part of the industry is involved in, and there's a ton of important information there. So and I will say this: the indoor air community is much more involved in science than the part of the industry that I came from, and to some extent, since you came through HVAC cleaning, duct cleaning.
Yeah,
um,
don't give us too much credit.
yeah, I was gonna. Well, I was gonna say you're
I'm
probably more like us.
mhm.
Um,
Me personally, yeah. I mean, I came from the from the contractor side, and
Right.
but right from the start, or from my first year in the industry, I realized back in the '80s that what I was being told by vendors at the time, and things I was being told didn't add up. And me being the inquisitive little idiot that I was back then, I was like, we're not doing this right. I can already tell. I don't know what the right way is, but I know what we're doing is kind of messed up. We need to work on this.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people now, and now we're all old. That's the scary part. Like, I was in my late 20s at that point. And all my peers from that era now are, we're the old vanguard. But I think, yeah, we were conscious of the fact that a lot needed to be learned, and it still does. We're so at the infantile stages of this industry, sadly. After 30 years, we haven't really moved the ball that far forward. We need to do a lot more, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although,
I'm not saying we haven't made advancements. I'm not be totally cynical here,
no, yeah, I know, I know.
but there's
I
more. We're not done. We're not done.
definitely not done, and I guess I would tend to be um, more disappointed that we aren't doing more. But if I look at it realistically, I think we made more progress than in terms of awareness than we're aware of. Than we're more aware than we are aware.
Right.
Um, in the sense that I think the younger generation, and for the most part, have an awareness that we did not. Honestly, I didn't. I mean, I just assumed what we were doing was the right thing to do, was the right way to do it.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody was dependent on vendors to tell them, you know, what is effective, what is ineffective. Of course, then they start fighting and about what is good and bad and
Right.
indifferent. And then, but you know, my part of the industry, and I don't think it was involved so much in yours, uh, benefited incredibly from the participation of Mike Berry in the cleaning industry.
Hmm.
And I know you are at least somewhat familiar with
Oh,
Mike,
sure. Yeah.
but Mike basically he challenged everybody to take a look at your paradigm. And he famously said at an IICRC meeting that your industry is going to be regulated. That's a given. The only question is whether you do it or the government does it. And Mike was an EPA official at that time,
Right.
and he said, "Trust me, you don't want the government to do it." And so, in the case of IICRC, they've done tremendous work in that area. And I know in duct cleaning,
Sure.
NADCA
Sure.
has established
And it
standards.
was in the same era too. That was back in the early '90s. Yeah, we did a lot of, we got involved with EPA with research. We got, standards were set at that point, because it was really Wild West before that organization was
Right.
formed. I mean, there was, the mindset was you just take a gazillion CFM vacuum hose and hook it up to a house, and you go around with compressed air and blast it around in the vents, and you're done. It's like, come on, that's not really clean. That's really not doing very much except stirring up
And
dust.
and if you collapse the duct system,
Uh, please,
it's probably a problem.
please. The early days were it's like I still have nightmares about 1990, and or even the late '80s, and some of the stuff that we saw and did. Look,
But we're
but
learning.
yeah, yeah.
We
Well, that's
are
the thing. I
learning.
mean, that's progress. I mean, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that maybe what you did 10, 20, 30 years prior wasn't as good as it could have been, but you do everything based on the knowledge you have at that time. I mean, that's
Right.
not unreasonable. You only can know what you know. I mean, I think the hardest part, especially with a scientific based industry or industries, take it under one big tent, everything we're doing, indoor environment stuff, right? So which
Hmm.
cleaning is part of indoor environment. It's all part
Right.
of it, making the indoor environment healthier, more habitable. um we still know a lot right now. I mean, now coming out of this pandemic, I think it's made people a lot more attuned. I'm talking the general community now. I mean, the industry's always
Right.
been attuned to this, but the general community, general public now worldwide is more concerned about the quality of their indoor environments. It's great.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, at least it's on the table now. So this is a great opportunity, I think, for all the various silos in the collective industry to push this thing forward and make some, real substantial progress, I hope.
Uh, you know, with what you just said, I hope you don't mind. Kind of, it's a little bit of a segue,
Oh, go for it.
but it's in my cleaning business. I do a blog, and I just last week posted the blog about a very unusual and strong increase in upholstery cleaning that I had noticed in my business. Now, this is entirely anecdotal because it only has to do with my business, but probably the amount of upholstery cleaning that we do compared to I would say 3 years ago is probably triple, and
Hmm.
to at least 2 to 3 times as much. And you know, in the again, it's speculating, but my speculation is that it has to do with greater awareness on the part of the public about cleaning and disinfection and surfaces that they use. Um, Upholstery's always been there. We are in intimate contact with
Hmm.
upholstery, but for carpet cleaning in general, probably historically, it might account for maybe 5 or 10% of your total revenues.
Hmm.
And it has, as I said, it's doubled to tripled in the case of my business in the last 3 years,
So
and
since 2020.
since 2020. Really,
Okay.
really, the big difference has just been this year. I would say the big difference was in 2022. And I again, that would have to do with a greater awareness on the part of the public. And I think in the part of carpet cleaning companies, they need to do a better job of communicating the value and benefit of that.
Well, I think one of the things we learned a long time ago with the joint study that EPA collaborated with NADCON back in the it was it's actually the mid to late 90s. We started it in 96, and I think we concluded it in 98. It was a pilot study for air duct cleaning. But one of the things that came up that was blatantly apparent was if you weren't doing a total environmental clean of a property, just cleaning out the HVAC system did not significantly, in most cases, benefit the overall indoor environment, the indoor air quality in the space, without going through and actually doing detailed cleaning on upholstery, on draperies, on, carpet, finished floors.
Right,
If,
right.
if you didn't do everything, it depends. I mean, there were exceptions. Obviously, if a system was grossly contaminated, then cleaning that did have a direct effect. But like in an average environment where there wasn't gross mechanical system contamination, you weren't making a major impact on the overall indoor air quality.
It's
And that,
interesting.
but it's true.
Yeah,
It's true. I mean, and again, it
right.
was a limited study, but it didn't surprise me, having worked on that and been the project manager for that. I wasn't surprised at all because, we were doing a lot of stuff on our own, doing laser particle counts in spaces and looking at pre and post, and they did it very detailed with a, big scientific team on these pilot buildings. And yeah, it was astounding to see that, you know, what you got there in the environment. And again, cleaning, I think cleaning is imperative, cleaning everything.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
you're
that's
right.
the first step in having a good indoor environment. If you don't properly clean.
And you'll never, what you what's important, and this is what we need to let scientists know is you're never going to have, and they do know really, but sometimes I think practitioners are kind of intimidated that they can't get to this point, and this point is reasonable uh, levels of cleanliness. You're not going to have a clean room. You can't have clean room cleanliness all over, and I'm not
Well,
sure
you
that you really
especially
want
can't
it.
in normal environments because the normal environments are designed to be clean rooms. There's too much porosity. The products and the
Exactly.
finishes and the things in there are not conducive to being a clean room.
Right, right.
They're not going to be.
So what and to, you know what we've made it. really, Bob, I think we made a lot of progress in a um, um, in an overall way towards having more uh, cleaner environments, more hygienically. I don't want to. I say hygienically clean. I'm just reiterating the same thing, but that the environment is relatively healthful. I mean, people are. We have all kinds of uh, bodily systems that protect us, and we have less need for protection today, I think, than we had 20, 30, 50 years ago, especially in like the first world countries, United States, Europe, those places where there's lots of uh, um, awareness of the importance of cleaning. And uh, for the most part, I think the cleaning that is done is effective.
No, it makes sense. And again, I think so much study, so much research has come out, with Sloan Institute's microbiome studies, and just you know understanding the fact that we don't necessarily want to go in and and nuke the indoor environment, and the whole premise of we're going to kill everything, but is not necessarily beneficial, because you set the whole biome off balance. Now, during the pandemic, there was this right carte blanche thing of we got to go in and fog and blast everything. Again, because at the early, especially the early stages, that nobody really had a great understanding. So it was like it made sense. Inactivity seemed unacceptable, so you had to do something. So guys in suits with foggers seemed like a reasonable response. you know,
I didn't think so.
I didn't either. I mean, people
But
say, "Oh,
I
you
know
must be,"
I get it. I get it. Why?
but
Honestly,
right,
they
but
did
I
it.
didn't either. I kept and on the shows back then, it's like you must be really busy out deconning buildings. I go, as a consultant, I go, no, I'm not, because it's no, that's not
Right.
the problem. As soon as people come back in the building, they're the vector. It's like unless we're gonna, actually put bleach in people, which I don't necessarily advocate. It's like we're not real. It's like this whole sanitizing. I mean, but see, there's exceptions to that too, right? When you have high transfer environments like schools where kids are multiple seatings at different desks and moving around, doing that real thorough daily, wipe down, sanitizing, cleaning, that actually does make sense on those high touch, high contact, high turnover environments. Absolutely.
I completely agree. But that isn't the same as coming in with a fogger and
Fogging every building, every it's like
right
no.
everywhere. Sorry about that. Had to thought I had that off. Yeah, you have well,
Yeah.
but school buses that are that are, and of course they probably needed it, but they were just they weren't cleaning, they were
Yeah.
just fogging.
They were just
and
bombing, bombing,
but yeah,
spraying biocides,
yeah, and actually Siri came out early and strongly against that approach to it, even though, I mean, everybody knew it was going to, I knew it was going to happen, I'm sure you knew it was going to happen.
Mhm.
There was too much money to be made doing it for it not to happen.
That's
uh,
like the mold rush in 2000,
yes,
same thing. I mean, we
it's the
it was
same.
every 20 years we have something that, makes us go crazy.
Right.
And that's a good point, because especially, in the SARS-CoV-2 thing, an enveloped virus actually is with a detergent surfactant. That's all you really need. You don't actually, to clean a surface and deactivate it, you don't actually need a killer biocide. Detergent does
Right.
a pretty good job.
Yes.
So just
Again,
clean,
in a
just
practical sense,
actually
if you do
clean.
right, that's one of the things that Siri
Yeah,
has said. I mean,
yeah.
in most situations, in a practical way, effective cleaning works. Again, I'll go back. That's kind of why Siri kind of thinks what we need to be focused on is how do we measure it? How do we measure cleaning effectiveness in a way that is not biased and will give good, clear answers to that? And if we can do that, I think Siri has done something important and valuable. Not only, and again, this goes to our mission, who we're responsible to, not necessarily to our members, but for the industry and most importantly for the public by
Yeah, it
doing
makes
that.
total sense. And honestly, having those, accepted methods of validating, verifying that sort of thing. That's critical because without that, we're all operating in the dark, whatever. And that's true for any industry, for any sector in the indoor environmental industry. If you don't have some way of quantifying and measuring and, and some replicatable, reliable way of doing that, I mean, what are you doing?
Right, exactly.
you know,
And
oh, it looks
unfortunately,
good,
too
looks
often
good
they
for
don't.
my house. It's like, I
Exactly.
don't know.
Well, people keep calling me, so I
Yeah.
must be good.
Yeah,
Well,
we're busy every day. We're booked, so we must be doing a great job. It's like not necessarily, It's
well,
kind of the emperor's new suit going on there a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah. Yes, exactly.
So
So,
yeah, what a terrible thing to say, but it's there's some truth to that. So we're coming up on we're on the hour. So but we're never like unlike broadcast television where we're dictated by the hundredths of a second, we can go a minute or so over or two or seven, whatever it takes. Final thoughts, because I want to give you an opportunity if there's some point that we didn't cover because it always goes so fast.
well, it seems like we covered
We covered
quite
a
a
lot.
bit. So, I think probably a couple final thoughts. One thing I kind of passed through, and I really don't think I should, related to the Healthy Buildings Conference in Syria, and that is that uh, the one area that I was disappointed in on that conference was that we were not able to get better participation. We had we had good participation in terms of people doing abstracts and participating on panels and things like that. But in terms of people attending the conference to learn from the information there, I feel as though there's still a lot of work to be done. And you and I have had conversations about this, and it's kind of hard to figure out how to make, you know, what is missing. I really thought that by making this available, it would be embraced. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Should have turned it off again. Um,
It happens.
so that is an area that I just, as a takeaway from that, I guess my takeaway is it's really something where there's still work to be done, important work to be done, because I do feel today, as I felt then, that there is a lot of value and a lot of importance, and both going in both directions,
Hmm.
for better cooperation between those who do academic research and those who are involved in the industry. I will tell you this related to that is I know better than ever that a lot of researchers, not all of them, some could care less, but the ones that I work with, they really want practitioner input. They really
Sure.
want to know what practitioners think. They really want to be able to uh, put together research that is relevant as opposed to something they think is,
Right.
might
Yeah.
be kind of cool to do.
It seems like that's super important because otherwise, there, what do we need to study? It'd be nice to, get a perspective. Well, I mean, there needs, and this was the whole premise of that Healthy Buildings Conference. There needs to be bilateral communication. It's got to be both ways. The industry does need to learn from academia, but academia needs to understand what they need to be studying next based on industry. And
Right.
somewhere the consumer,
Yeah.
I always say it's a triangle. Somewhere the consumers, both residential and commercial consumers, they all got to be in the mix. There's got to be feedback, and it's got to be. I
They
don't know
really
what.
should be in the center of it all.
Yeah, there
But
needs to definitely be some sort of cross pollination.
all right, so I said the good thing for researchers. The bad thing for researchers, as you mentioned, you kind of brought up wanting to do better, more relevant research.
Sure.
Too often what they want to do is they want to do research that somebody's willing to pay for. So the
Yeah.
deep pocketed government and other groups like that. Then the last thing I just, and I did talk about this earlier, but I would, if we can maybe leave it with this, is I would urge those who are involved with the indoor air quality industry to look into CERI's website. Go to CERI's website, which is now, you've put it up there. on the
Oh, yeah.
screen.
Yes.
And we're still in the process of getting more papers there, but there is a fair amount of information that we have made available that is relevant to people, especially in the remediation area. We had a great paper by Ralph Moon on specifically about ATP and the limitations of its usefulness in remediation situation, restoration and remediations situations. So I that is the area where CIRI is going to continue to be um, focused on providing information to the industry is through our website. So bookmark it.
There you go. Yeah, and so it's again, it's CiriScience.org. So that's the website. We'll put it up one more time just for a reference point. There you go. Um, so I this is great. We of course we always run out of time. We never get to speak long enough because that's just I could
It's the
spend
way it
hours
works.
speaking with you, John. That's just the way it is.
Likewise.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm so happy in the last several years that we've got to know each other and have an opportunity to chat about these things. It's been great.
Yeah.
So next week, just a little precursor here. Next Thursday, same bat time, bat channel. We're going to be joined by Dr. David Kraus. I think the person who's been on our show the most over the years. Uh, Dave's going to be back on the show next week. I know he's going to be speaking about Legionella because that's something that's dear and foremost to him. But those of you who don't know Dave is a PhD, certified industrial hygienist, public health, worked in public health in the state of Florida, ran the IQ division there for a while. So he's just got a wealth of knowledge, and love having him here, to discuss those things. So again, if you're not a part of the Healthy Indoors online global community, you probably should be. So healthyindoors.global is the landing page to get you where you can sign up and become a full-fledged member. We changed our membership status a little bit now, so we've made the pro level membership really inexpensive. It's like $19.95 a year. So it's less than what you spend on your Starbucks coffee in probably a week. You can actually become a member and get access to all these things, like the wonderful Ask Me Anything that's coming up next week on the community, next Wednesday, again, the 28th of September from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to have Jeff May, who is just a long time expert in the industry, and you'll be able to actually, as a member, log into the Zoom meeting that we're gating there, and ask Jeff questions on air. We're moderating it, and it'll be should be fantastic. Also, it's just a good place to be. I think it's really worthwhile. So I'd like to thank at this point, John, for taking time out of his busy day. Obviously, your phone's ringing off the hook while you're here, so I know you're busy.
Sorry
Uh,
about that.
nah, it's dude. It's like, please, you don't need to apologize. We I think run in similar circles on what we do in a given day.
I know we have a lot more in common than we knew we had in common.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We both are always running and doing more than humanly possible, but that's okay. So until next week, John. Again, John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bob.
We'll be back here again next week for the Healthy Indoor Show, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time next week. So until next week, I'm Bob Krell. Stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll see you soon.